this computer. Okay. Hello and welcome to a short webinar from the Minnesota Centers of Excellence for Young Children with Disabilities. I'm Sally Hansen, a PDF in Region 11 and the Classroom Engagement Model Content Lead. And I'm teaming up with Hope, also a PDF in Region 11 and the Pyramid Model Content Lead, to take a few things we know about best practice for routines, expectations, and family engagement to share with our MINCO partners as you get ready to head back to school. So we're going to share with you a few simple strategies that you may already be familiar with, and then help think a little bit about what does it look like during this special circumstance, the 2020-2021 school year. So we'll get started. First, we are going to talk through creating and teaching consistent, predictable routines. This is a strategy that many preschool teachers are familiar with and use on a regular basis. We wanted to call attention during this upcoming school year to the really important pieces of consistent, predictable routines. We know that children are coming back after a very long break in a school routine, or perhaps never having a school routine. So building these trusting relationships through routines and predictability will be very important. Will also increase engagement. When children understand what's coming next, they can worry less about the schedule and focus more on engaging and learning. Additionally, we know many children are feeling the stress of the global pandemic and the other situations that we're facing during this very strange year. And so having that consistency and predictability is a key trauma-informed practice, and you'll be meeting the needs of many students when you do that. Some of the tips that we have found helpful for consistent, predictable routines. We borrow this strategy from Classroom Engagement Model. I think some of our Pyramid Model sites use it, but it's good, well-rounded practice that all classrooms can use. Create a routine within routine. So your daily schedule is your first routine, and you may be starting your day out with a modified circle time and then moving to some playtime with some space and then heading over to a snack time. If each of those steps of your daily schedule can have specific routines. Do kids need to wash their hands more frequently? Can we build that into the routine where we come to school, we wash our hands, we find our seat at circle, and then we're ready to go. We have the same 4 activities at circle time every day, or we do the exact same things in the same order during our transition to snack time every day. Keeping in mind that transitions themselves are routines. So if we are going to change the routine, leaving circle time, moving to playtime to create just a little more predictability, maybe you're going to have kids instead of just getting up to go play, maybe you're going to have them have hand sanitizer first, and then they're going to be dismissed one at a time to go to a specific station. We can build those routines in with visuals, and we can teach those routines throughout the year. So as we're all adjusting to something different, we'll keep in mind that it's going to take a little bit more teaching, a little more prompting, a little more reinforcing in order to help children understand these new routines and the expectations that go with it. So as you are moving forward with your routines, there are a few things, food for thought. What are the examples that you already have in your program that you can share with your colleagues, that you can think about in your classroom? What are those important daily routines to teach children? Are they the same as they were last year? Are they different? Are there additional routines? Think through, how's the best way to teach these routines? Do we want a visual schedule? Might we send out a recorded YouTube video model before school starts so that families and children can talk through these new routines at home? Maybe you're going to write a little social story about how the routine of getting off the bus is different than it was before. And then again, thinking about how are we going to continue to support children throughout the year? Some of your kiddos might be attending in a reduced schedule. So will they need more reminders, more reinforcement? We also know from Classroom Engagement Model that when we can build routines that help kiddos answer these questions, we have built consistency and predictability. So we don't go up and ask kids to answer these questions, but we hold them in mind as we build the routine. Kids should be able to know, what am I doing now? How do I know I'm making progress? So what's the indication that we're almost done with snack or that we're moving through circle time? How will I know when I'm finished? When we're all done, what will happen? And then of course, what comes next? So we know this is a lot of review, but there are some new resources available or some existing resources that we want to call your attention to. And I'm going to turn it over to Hope to share some of those resources with you.
Thanks, Sally. I love the visual from the classroom engagement model of those 4 questions. I think they apply to us as adults too, because I can ask myself those 4 questions for every routine of my day, whether I'm unloading the dishwasher or going to the gym or getting groceries or vacuuming and cleaning. It's so easy to just remind ourselves of those 4 simple questions. So that's really helpful. Yeah, so Sally, will you click on that first link, the greeting board for social distancing? This is a new resource that has come out from the National Center on Pyramid Model Innovations. And you do not have to be a pyramid model site or implementing the pyramid model to take advantage of this great free resource. But as we know, the option of doing a hug, a handshake, or a high five for a greeting in a preschool classroom is probably not going to be taking place this year. And our friends at NCPMI have come up with these other great options and visuals for children to greet each other at school or even in the community. So this is, you can download this. We've got them all linked for you. And there's just some great social greeting options on here.
I love that they share everything free and available for everyone. So helpful.
Yes, for free.
Yes.
This next resource is a short handout. It's 5 pages, but the reading is really only 3 pages that you might want to share with staff when staff come back this school year, just to help remind staff about the importance of routines and schedules. What are they? Why do we have routines and schedules? How do we know if routines and schedules are working? How should our routines be set up during a preschool day? So this could just be a quick article to use if you've got some PD time to just reflect on the preschool routines and classroom schedules and think about the why behind the importance of classroom routines and schedules. And so that's the second link there. And the third link is just the link that Sally shared on that previous slide about those 4 key questions to consider. Some of your staff may find this helpful to print out. I know if I were in a classroom teaching, I would probably want to have that printed out and inside a cabinet, just as a reminder for myself as a teacher about what do I want to ensure kids know during each routine during the day. We really just pulled out 3 or 4 examples of strategies and or resources that are available around each topic that we're talking about today. Please know there are plenty out there. We realize some of you are being bombarded with resources right now. So we really just wanted to highlight a few that we thought may be helpful. All right, Sally, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Hope. And I think it goes hopefully without saying that just have a lot of grace and patience for yourself as you're building new routines, as well as understanding that it's going to take time to teach those to the children as we all come back. Once we have some routines in place, we can start thinking about expectations. And having expectations in place and communicating them to children is a key component of pyramid model. But again, it's an evidence-based practice that all programs can use, all classrooms can use. When we are able to share the expectation about how we need kiddos and adults to behave, they're more likely to act in those appropriate ways. We know that when we say expectations, we want to tell our kiddos what to do rather than what not to do. So an example might be we wear masks at school, which would be more aligned to the practice than stop taking your mask off. So we want to tell kids what we're doing and how to do it. And then we want to teach those expectations really clearly and revisit them often. When you think about what examples we might use social stories. I can wear a mask on the bus. I can stay safe at school. I can wash my hands. We can have visual reminders of what does safety look like. I use my hands to play with toys instead of my mouth. We might do videos. Again, in this age where we've all become tech experts, maybe we take advantage of recording a Google Meet or a Zoom and walking through expectations with kids about where are they going to sit at the snack table, or how are they going to have an individual bag of materials that's going to be just theirs, and how do they clean it up at the end of small group time, or do they have a prop bag that they're using at circle time to increase engagement, that they're going to take their toy out and put their toy back and they're not going to pass it. It's real weird to teach preschoolers not to share, but in this particular situation, we might have to go through that. What does that look like under these different circumstances? And then again, always having that positive descriptive feedback so that children know when they're on the right track. Nice job cleaning up your things. You did a great job staying safe when you put your toys back in your bag. And then we have some food for thought. So maybe start by brainstorming with your teaching team. What are the expectations that are new? What do we need to make sure that we adapt? Maybe you're already having some expectations in your program that we need to think about, what do they look like now, and adapt that. And so we can think about what teaching method and what prompts and supports. I think one of our tricks, folks, is that we all have a lot of resources in our bag, and now we're just thinking about how do they apply in this new situation. So if you have classroom expectations of being respectful, being safe, being responsible, you can think about, what does that look like now that we're in a new situation? Well, it might look like smiling with your eyes and waving instead of giving high fives. It might look like waiting for your turn to go wash your hands and staying a little bit farther apart. It's just like the expectations we've all had to adjust to at Target and the grocery store. We can do this, and we can do it together. We have tools. We can reinforce kids just the way we always have. If children, threw a block across the room, that was a safety issue, we would address it. It'll be the same. If kids get too close, we'll address it as a safety issue, and we'll remind them what the expectations are. So let's go ahead and get back to resources that Hope has put together for us.
And we recognize that you may not have a big, pretty chart like that, the behavior expectation matrix, which is totally fine. But we also recognize that all programs do have expectations, and it's a matter of how do we communicate that. And we're just encouraging you to think about, what are those new expectations that you may need to consider given the pandemic that we're going through. So this first one, if you'll go ahead and open that up, Sally. This is just a visual of what it might look like to set clear behavior expectations. This actually comes to us through NCPMI, and they partner with Vanderbilt on some of their resources. So this is one that's not necessarily a handout that you'll have up in your classroom, but more so just walking you through, what does it look like to state behavior expectations positively? These are really just a summary of what we want to do with the expectations that we have. The next resource is a sample poster for expectations. If you'll scroll down, Sally. This is just a sample that NCPMI has put together around expectations that we are safe, we are kind, and we are responsible. And so then we want to think about, for each routine of our day, for each routine in our daily schedule, what does it mean to be safe given the pandemic? And one of the most important things is that we have to teach those expectations. And so on the first page of this handout, you have a simple 8-step process on how you might want to think about teaching the expectations. So these are it's just a good reminder of the steps involved to make sure that we're intentionally teaching. And the last resource is just the sample that Sally shared with you on slide 5 about about examples of the wording for expectations given the pandemic, like wearing face masks and staying 6 feet apart, and how we might want to frame those in a positive light to children and families.
Thanks, Hope. So we've talked about routines and we've talked about expectations. I've heard from so many programs that this year and the end of last year really allowed for increased family engagement, because that's really our touch point in distance learning, and will continue to be an important touch point as we move forward. And so as you're considering opportunities to increase family engagement and to partner with families, we want to think about both information we're going to share with families so they're informed about what's happening at school, as well as information we need to gather from families in order to have that true partnership and that collaboration. So we might want to share new routines, new expectations, possibly some safety plans so that families understand what's happening. There's many more things we may share. These are just examples. Same opportunity with gathering information. Do families have questions about those expectations? Do they have ideas for supporting children at home or at school? What other information do you need to gather from families so that you can be a true partner with them? And then as we move into some examples, again, we've got a couple of options around video, thinking about the limited opportunity to bring large groups of people together. Can we take advantage of technology again or further? Maybe you're going to try a virtual open house and you're going to have a video of the classroom and where the different areas are and what do the safety pieces look like. Is there tape on the floor designating different space, or do children have chairs that they're named and labeled? Maybe you're going to have a Q&A time slot, much like you would sign up for a conference, a parent-teacher conference. Maybe you sign up for a virtual open house conference so that you can meet the teacher and the child can meet the teacher ahead of time. Maybe the entire program is going to have a Google Meet session with your program's leader and just ask questions about the school year, and the leader can offer some ideas of what they know so far and take into account any other questions. And some folks are already using classroom apps like Seesaw and Remind. How can we really intentionally use those pieces of technology to support family engagement? And one routine or one opportunity that you may find helpful is to walk through supporting engagement in home routines. This came out of the classroom engagement model. It's very applicable to all programs. If you're in a distance learning sort of actual preschool programming, families might be wondering what can they do to increase engagement at home. We have this linked in your resources. We also have it filled out with an example of if the routine is that my preschooler is home and my first grader is either doing homework or on a Zoom call. What I really need is for my preschooler to be engaged appropriately in something while I support my first grader. And so we've walked through how can we use the routine, the child's interests, active participation, and then sneak in a little bit of learning, like popping the broccoli into the pizza, in order to support families with that. And so it may be a resource you want to dig into, especially if you're looking at some distance learning this year.
Sally, I'm so glad you emphasized with family engagement that we're not just thinking about what information we're giving families, but also what information families are giving us. I have a 4-year-old niece who's starting preschool in a week, and she got to have a personal Zoom session with her new teachers that she's never met, Miss Catherine and Miss Jocelyn. And she's so excited. That's all she talked about this weekend, is that she got to meet her preschool teachers. And just thinking about what that did for my niece and my sister and her husband as far as relationship building going into this school year. Speaking of which, this first link goes to a handout that NCPMI created. This is one of my favorite new handouts that they've created. But it's just saying, this is a form that you can send home to families or ask families. It's my teachers want to know. We want to know how this pandemic has affected not only your child, but parents as well. How has it affected your family unit? And how is your child doing? This may be a great resource that you want to send home or create a Google survey of, but how can we gather this information that makes families' experiences feel valued and feel considered when thinking about planning for their child's experience in school this fall? The next resource is just simple steps and reminders on connecting with families. If you're not really sure how to connect with families, and I'm not sure what that first phone call might sound like, this gives you a little bit of a script, and you might just want to pull a question or two that you really like from this handout to think about using in those initial conversations with families. This next handout, you saw this visual on one of the slides that Sally shared. This is a social story on wearing masks. We recognize that not all 3- and 4-year-olds will have to wear masks in preschool classrooms, but we know that out in the community, they are being encouraged to. And it sounds like on buses, they will be asked to wear masks as well. And so this is a social story that you can use in classrooms and or consider sharing with families, so that families can use the same social story to help children become more familiar with the whole idea of wearing masks and to help children become more comfortable with it. There's some really cute visuals in there and some adorable masks. And we know that at this point in the pandemic, some children are already used to it and it's just kind of their normal routine when going out in the community. But some children may still be struggling with that. So this is a good social story that you can use in the classroom or as a resource for families. The next handout is tips for supporting your child during the pandemic. This is a great resource that your program could share with families. You may feel like it's too wordy. It may be something that you just want to share one tip a week with. We've got some reflective questions to help you think through how might you take advantage of these simple tips that have been nicely compiled by our national partners about what things are most critical to think about when supporting preschool children right now during the pandemic. And this last one is the resource that Sally shared with us already. It's an example filled in. Actually, yeah, there's a couple ideas already filled in there. So that one is linked for you as well in case this handout may be helpful.
Yeah, we gave you a blank one if you find it helpful to use in your program, and then an example that's filled out. I don't think we have any relationship slides, so I'll let you talk these through. But before you do that, I have to say I love the story about your niece. I also have to just say, every time we say pandemic, I think the thought bubble that comes up is, are we really doing this? Is this really what's happening? So I just, hopefully all of you are approaching this school year with patience for yourself and grace for yourself and others. And while we at Minco feel very optimistic and positive that we stand ready to support you and partner with you, in no way are we downplaying the stress that this is bringing to you or the difficulty this brings your program and your families. We realize and recognize, and as soon as we're off these webinars, you could hear us sharing our worries and our concerns. We're putting on a brave face for you now because we do stand ready to support you. And we believe if anyone can make these changes, it's our incredible, dedicated, passionate, innovative early childhood folks. So with that, I want to turn it back to Hope to talk through some of the relationship resources.
Such a great point, Sally. We've already been so inspired by conversations we're having with program leaders, program coaches, program teams, practitioners about creative ways that they're already approaching these conversations. But all in all, it comes down to relationships with children, with families and caretakers, and relationships with each other as staff. So thinking about using positive words, this is really a handout that's just designed to support you in thinking about the value and meaning that can come out of positive words. This is given an example. Sally had talked when we were referencing behavior expectations about framing them in a positive light. So these give good examples of how to take something that we don't necessarily want to say and turning it into something that we do want to say. So that's the first resource. It's not specific to the pandemic, but just a great reminder of how we can frame things in a positive light. This handout here just gives you examples of how you might start providing positive, descriptive feedback to children to encourage them and the value that that brings in your relationship with children and families. And you can't help but notice the beautiful smile on that child's face. So cute. All right, help us stay calm. We recognize that some children have a hard time regulating when they come to school in the first place, right? And given the pandemic and everything that's going on with the pandemic and how it's impacting our routines in our daily life, some children may struggle in class. And so this is just an example of how we can support children in a relationship building capacity through those times when they might be struggling with regulating or with some challenging behavior. So these are just simple reminders on what you may do as a staff member or how you may want to encourage parents who may be helping a child who's having a difficulty staying calm.
I really appreciate this resource because it reminds us what we intellectually know, that in the middle of a really high charged emotional moment or a midst of a challenging behavior, we're not in that place to reteach or to teach a new skill. We're really in that place of de-escalating, getting calm, reconnecting and then we can do the work of the teaching or reteaching. And I appreciate the visual both for preschool programs and early childhood educators as well as for families.
Yeah. Great point. Thanks, Sally. This next one is responsive caregiving checklist. This is just a great one-page handout. If you want staff to reflect on where they're at with their relationships with children, families, and or each other, this really just highlights the key strategies that are evidence-based strategies when thinking about building supportive relationships. And last but not least, as Sally was saying, we recognize everybody is under stress right now. These are stressful times. We are doing business in a way that we have never done it before. And so it's very important for you to be able to take care of yourself and to be able to support yourself during the pandemic. This is something that you can share with either parents or with staff in your program. Just simple reminders about how can we try and be aware of what we need to do to take care of ourselves as we're all trying to be caretakers and take care of others right now. Once again, we recognize this is a long list of resources. We hope some of them are valuable to you. And we've got some reflective questions that you can think about as a program or as a leader when you're exploring these resources.
Yeah, and that's all we have for today. We wanted to give you this short-ish nugget of information about how you can use what you probably already know and already do in your program, adapt it to this very different year. As always, thank you for everything you do. Children and families count on you, and you always rise to the occasion. Also know your PDF and the MINCO team is here. We're happy to anytime be a sounding board, be a cheerleader, be a resource finder, be a thought partner. However we can support you to continue to do the good work you're doing, we're here for you. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you.